Good morning, everybody. My name is Andre Daly, and I am the Director of Inclusion at the Grand Rapids Chamber. On behalf of the Grand Rapids Chamber, I'm excited to welcome you to this time and thankful that you dedicated an hour of your day to explore issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Before we get started, please bear in mind that today's event will be recorded, and you can tune back and watch this and listen to this session at a later date. We're thrilled, I am thrilled to have two amazing folks joining us today. Jill May of Trisector Consulting and Alyssa Perez Moran Arellano of Inclusive Empowerment Services. Sorry, Alyssa, I got that wrong. Today, we are focusing on LGBTQIA plus inclusion in business in the past, in the present, and for the future. And I could not think of two more exceptional speakers to speak to this and share this with you today. I'm also excited to get our program started, but before we go, I want to recognize our sponsors for today's program. Our premier sponsor today is Spartan Nash. Our event underwriters are Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan and Spectrum Health. Our lead supporters are Consumers Energy and OST. Executive sponsors for today's program are Allied Mechanical Services, Amway, DTE, Gemini Media, Gentex Corporation, Hayworth, Meyer, Mercantile Bank, Trinity Health, and Verizon. Our chamber champions are AHC Hospitality, the Gerald R. Ford International Airport, HAP, Warner, Norcross, and Judd, and the University of Michigan Health West. Please help me to recognize our sponsors for today. A few reminders and housekeeping tips to maximize your virtual experience today. You will have an opportunity to submit questions throughout and using the chat function. We'll get to as many questions as we can following the presentations as time allows. You can also utilize the chat to engage in each other. So we want this to be an interactive experience. If you hear something that one of the speakers shares that resonates with you, place a quick note in the chat. If you all are having thoughts about what you hear and interacting with each other, please do share that also in the chat and engage so that we can build the energy and keep the energy going around this important topic. Should you experience any technical issues, please send a direct chat to the Grand Rapids Chamber. A member of our staff, Sean Halsey, is here to assist you. And now I want to introduce and hand things over to our Vice President of Business and Talent Development, Atal Bande, for our introductions.
Thank you, Andre. Good morning, everybody. Excited to be with you all today. As Andre mentioned, we have two very incredible speakers with us today, and I get the honor of introducing both of them. So I'll go ahead and introduce both of them today. As Andre mentioned, each speaker will speak about 15 minutes, and at the end, you'll have the opportunity for moderated Q&A. And so with that, I'll introduce our speakers. Our first will be Jill May, and then following her will be Alyssa Perez Arellano. But a little about Jill first. Jill is a lifelong nonprofit professional dedicated to helping make her community a better place to live, work, play, and all. She has served in leadership positions for a wide variety of nonprofit organizations throughout West Michigan and Northern Michigan. In 2019, Jill founded Trisector Consulting to apply her expertise in leveraging the strengths of the three sectors, business, public, and nonprofit, to develop scalable and sustainable solutions for our community's largest and most persistent problems. Throughout her career, she experienced many challenges in navigating the business world as a member of the LGBTQIA plus community. To help others overcome these challenges, she has co-founded Outpro in 2012, an LGBTQIA plus professionals group, along with David Abbott and Rick Baker. She went on to oversee Outpro's merger with the Grand Rapids Chamber, which became the first regional chamber in the nation to offer such a program. She is also a founding board member of the LGBTQ plus alumni chapter at Grand Valley State University and our LGBTQ plus fund at the Grand Rapids Chamber Foundation. She earned a master's degree in public and nonprofit administration from GVSU and a bachelor's degree in journalism and communication from Olivet. So Jill, as you can see, has some experience with the topic for today. And then with Elisa Perez Ariano, she's the founder and owner and CEO of Inclusive Empowerment Services, a private practice that offers mental health therapy, professional coaching, consulting, and training. Through her organizations, Elisa offers a unique model of mental health therapy. She offers professional coaching for entrepreneurs, business owners, corporate leaders, and professionals who want to improve and strengthen their personal, professional, and work lives. As a businesswoman, Elisa understands the challenges that today's leaders face, such as high levels of stress, lack of self-care due to working long hours and high job demands. The purpose of Lisa's model of mental health therapy and professional coaching is to help leaders align their body, mind, and soul through the exploration and identification of their behavioral and cognitive patterns to help them determine if they're living a life of personal fulfillment and professional purpose. Elisa is a clinical social worker with over 12 years of professional experience in areas such as behavioral mental health therapy, life coaching, community outreach and advocacy, and program development. Again, you can see that our speakers here come with a wealth of experience. Really looking forward to hear what you have to say. And so with that, I'll turn things over to you first, Jill.
Thank you, Ata. Let's see. Ooh, hold on a second here. Okay. Am I sharing my screen? Share screen. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Is my slides showing up okay? Okay. So thank you, Ata, for that introduction. Thank you to Ata, Andre, the Chamber. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today, especially alongside my wonderful panelist, Elisa. It's great to be here with her. And thanks to everyone for coming. I appreciate that you're interested in this topic. Obviously, it's something that's very passionate to me as well. Let's see. So there was a really good the introduction there, and so don't need to go into all the detail of this. I do want to just start with a little bit of a caveat. When I'm talking about the LGBTQIA community, that's quite a mouthful. There's a lot of letters there. And sometimes I do end up sort of stumbling over them with my tongue. And so you'll often hear me kind of shorten that to LGBT. I do not mean to exclude anyone. It's just easier to say. I also use the word queer, and I hope that doesn't offend anyone. We, as the queer community, have taken that term back to mean something positive. And it's actually a very nice umbrella term for anyone that falls into that LGBTQIA space. And those spaces can sometimes be gray. And so the word queer is just a really nice umbrella term for all of that. And so you might hear me interchange LGBT and queer. Like I said, I'm not meant to exclude anyone, and I'm not meaning to offend anyone. So, you got a lot of background about me already, but I thought it might be fun to just hear a little bit more about how some of these things came to be. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about these things, and then I'm going to talk about the context in which these things were happening. What was going on out in the world, nationally, across the state and locally during this time that really kind of impacted us starting all these groups. And so I'm just going to start a little bit here. So first, in 2012, I began a networking group for LGBT professionals. It wasn't just me, it was a couple other folks from the community. I think you heard Rick Baker, Dave Abbott, and there were others that were really integral at the beginning, other folks from the chamber, other community leaders in the queer space, all a part of that. It began very informally, as a result of those barriers and those challenges to navigating the business community as a queer person. We felt that this was hard for us and that maybe it would be hard for others. And so why not try to just get the word out and get some people together to sort of talk, have a safe space, support each other. And so it started very organically. It literally just started with people sitting around a table. You know, we had 6, then we had 10, then we had 12. And eventually it grew to the point where we had to change it to a networking format. And then it just kept going from there. We were selling out. We were getting requests for sponsorships. It was becoming such a popular program and in such high demand that these few volunteers just couldn't manage it anymore. We didn't have capacity. So thank goodness, we had chamber folks involved from the very beginning. And when they saw that it was growing to this point, they offered to take the program on as a program of the chamber. And that's how OutPro was born. So that's a fun little history lesson for us because now OutPro has grown over the years to be a very successful program. I think it's really become an affinity group for the community, and especially for employers who maybe don't have affinity groups or support internally. OutPro's become kind of that go-to place, and I'm very proud to have been a part of that story. In 2014, I helped to found our LGBT fund at the Grand Rapids Community Foundation. And you'll see this picture here of my wife, Jen, and I. That was actually a photo shoot for the fund. And that picture, after we signed a photo release, ended up becoming the face of the campaign. So it was on the front of all the brochures and the collateral. It was on the front of the online campaign. We had no idea that that would be the picture they would select for the face of the campaign, but when we signed off on that photo release, anything can happen. So that was our 15 minutes of fame. We even had some folks recognize us out in the community. But the fund was specifically founded really by Shelley Padnos and Carol Sorosik. And they had started the fund with a $100,000 gift, and they challenged the community to match that gift. We quickly were able to match that gift and then some. And now over the years, that fund has grown to over $1 million, and we were able to make some substantial grants out of it every year. Originally, we started making grants specifically to address youth homelessness. And that was because on average, and this is a bit of an old statistic, on average, 40% of all homeless youth identify as LGBT in some way. And so we knew that if we were supporting organizations that were addressing youth homelessness, that we were going to be making a big difference in the lives of a lot of young queer people. We're at this pivotal point right now with the LGBT fund where we're looking at restructuring the fund. We're in the middle right now of doing what's called some deep listening sessions. So the committee is out meeting with different groups of people, focus groups from all throughout the community. And we're going to take all that feedback and then incorporate it into a new grant making strategy. And I can tell you now that that strategy is going to focus a lot more on intersectionality. So if you're familiar with that term, that means the intersection that someone might experience with multiple, so there may be multiple minority. So you might be gay and Black, you might be lesbian and Latinx, you might be bisexual and have a disability. So that's what those intersectionality means. And I know that that's the direction we're going to be going. It's just going to wonder how. So please stay tuned. And we're going to be rolling that out by the end of the year, what our new structure, our grant making structure will be. And then we'll have some RFPs. So if you're in that space, be looking for that later this year. I also helped to found the LGBT alumni chapter at Grand Valley State University, Go Lakers. And that was a group that's founded partially to help support, the LGBT Resource Center at Grand Valley. So we do fundraising and friend-raising to support that. And it was also meant to be a support system. So while students are at Grand Valley, they get the support of the LGBT Resource Center. And then as they transition and graduate out, they then are supported by the alumni chapter. And then in 2021, Up North Pride, they kind of brought me out of retirement, and not that I really was retiring, but word got out that we have a place up there, and the font, they invited me to sit on the board, and I did. I accepted that invitation, and I'm actually helping them with some organizational development. They're 100% volunteer-driven organization. However, the demand of the community in Northern Michigan is great. There are very few resources up there for the queer community, and everyone's sort of looking for Up North Pride to provide those resources. But that's much higher than the capacity of the volunteers that run it. And so my role at this point is I'm working on helping to develop a staffing plan and fundraising so that that organization can start hiring some staff and really start to meet the needs and move the needle up in Northern Michigan. So, like I said, now I was part of founding all of these things. You can see that a lot of it happened in the early 2010. And so that's not by chance. That's because there were a lot of things going on in the world that sort of impacted and led to these groups being needed. So I'm going to talk about what was going on then and how that relates back. I had to show just a throwback picture. This is the night that we announced that OutPro was going to be merging with the Chamber. David, myself, Rick, and then John O'Neill, who Conduit Studios, who did that first logo. That red logo was the first logo. I know, I think it's vintage now. It's gone through several iterations since then. So here was something that was going on at that time. So the court overturns DOMA. So if you're not familiar with DOMA, DOMA is the Defense of Marriage Act. And it said that marriage was between one man and one woman. And you'll see here in 2013, so we're in those early 2000s, 2010s, the Supreme Court overturned DOMA, and it was the case was called the United States versus Windsor. They declared DOMA unconstitutional, thereby requiring the federal government to recognize same-sex marriages conducted by the states. Later, there was another ruling that requires that all states perform and recognize the marriage of same-sex couples. So that happened. That was a huge win for the LGBT community. We were just celebrating from the rooftops. And now you can see over here on the right, that's my wedding. What Jen and I got married. So our anniversary is September 2nd of 2013. So it was literally just long enough after we'd already been together for 10 years. By the time DOMA was overturned, we were well past ready to get married. And so we actually went to Windsor. We jumped over the border to Canada. And that actually is a beautiful space there on Lake Erie where we were able to get married. And then when we came back over the border, it was really fun. All the Border Patrol folks were celebrating for us, and it was neat. Anyways, so that was awesome. However, we were married, and that was recognized under the federal government, but our marriage was not yet recognized under the state of Michigan. And that really caused a lot of barriers. Maybe the biggest barrier was in the tax implications. Taxes were crazy for us those years. Okay, let's see. So DOMA getting overturned, that's a big thing. Okay, now what's happening in this slide? This actually, let's see. So I was the lead fundraiser for this key economic development organization. I managed the campaign cabinet that led the fundraising efforts of the organization. The campaign cabinet co-chair was and still is Doug DeVos. Now with this story, I am not trying to vilify Doug DeVos. As a professional fundraiser in West Michigan, that would be a good way to end my career very quickly. And I also have to recognize that Doug and his family have been a huge impact to our community and making it what it is today. My intent with this story is really just to provide an example of how I felt discriminated against in a way that you probably wouldn't think of, and really trying to help you understand that discrimination can happen in many forms, and that oftentimes it's in ways that you would never imagine. And so this is a little bit of a hard story to tell, but I'm going to tell it. So this article came out on a Sunday night. There were actually several articles that came out this weekend about this gift. It was a six-figure gift, by the way, to this anti-gay marriage group. Well, I was this week, this all happened on a Sunday. I was about to embark on a very busy week of fundraising meetings with Mr. DeVos. And so I can remember going to work that next morning after these articles came out, and I had meetings with him later that afternoon, and I ended up shutting myself in my office with the door closed all morning long, trying to reconcile these two things. The person that I'm about to work very closely with over the next several months believes that I don't deserve the same rights as heterosexual couples. that was really hard for me to take. And I literally it was one of the hardest moments of my career to try to reconcile those two things. And so it called on every fiber of my being to turn the other cheek and rise to my typical standard of professionalism. And the way that I was able to do that was that I just had to compartmentalize. I had to put those feelings on a shelf, in a box, and then really come together with him around something that we're both passionate about, and that is economic development. I believe strongly in the mission of this organization, and so did he. And so I tried very hard to just live in that space with him where we overlap, so that mentally and emotionally I could do this work with him. And that's what I ended up doing. And I will say that we ended up being very successful. This type of thing has happened to me many times since then. And I've just gotten a lot better at dealing with it. I don't take 3 hours and close myself in my office anymore. It's something that it's just become part of life. In fact, I am working with a client right now that's faith-based, and I've had to go back in the closet when I work with them. But again, this is about survival. This is what I have to do in order to pay my bills and live my life and have my career. And so, even in this day and age, we still can't be our total selves everywhere we go. Okay, at the same time that all of the marriage stuff was going on, there was also a lot of significant things happening around employment and housing rights for the queer community. The Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination in Michigan on the basis of religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, height, weight, familiar status, or marital status in employment, housing, education, and access to public accommodations. In 2014, the ACLU led an effort to have sexual orientation and gender identity included in the act as protected classes. So I just want to clarify, sexual orientation and gender identity are two different things. Sexual orientation is about who you want to be in a relationship with, lesbian, gay, bisexual. Gender identity is literally about your gender. Do you identify as a female, a male? Are you gender nonconforming? Are you transgender? It's important to differentiate. Those are two different things, sexual orientation, gender identity. And so we were trying to include those as a protected class under the Civil Rights Act in Michigan. Unfortunately, at this time, it did not go through. And I think, I remember back then the strategy was we were being advised to only include the sexual orientation piece, the LGB piece. So there was an idea that if we just included those pieces, that it would pass more easily, and that people just hadn't come around to feeling as comfortable with transgender people. So if we left transgender in this bill, it would be less likely to pass. And so the recommendation was to take them out. Well, the community didn't agree with that. We were not about to leave our transgender family behind. And so we said, no, we are keeping the transgender in this, and we are a united front. We're all going to work together to be protected. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. Gender identity and sexual orientation is not yet included in the Civil Rights Acts. And these, this is about a barrier to employment, housing, public access, education. So this is a barrier for talent attraction. So this is why businesses are really interested in this. If you're trying to recruit some top talent and that person happens to be queer, and they do their research about moving to Michigan, and they find that, hey, I'm not a protected class, my marriage rights could be at risk, maybe this isn't a state that I want to move to. And so those things really do become barriers and for recruiting top talent and for allowing West Michigan to be as competitive as it can be. And so we're still working on this. All right. Now, a couple of years later, after DOMA, we finally get gay marriage in Michigan. And so our marriages are now fully recognized both at the state and the federal level, just like anyone else. So our marriages are fully legal and recognized, just like heterosexual couples now in Michigan. And that's a very exciting thing. However, we're going to talk a little bit about how that's a little bit volatile right now. So here's some noteworthy history in Grand Rapids that was also kind of happening around this time. You'll see a lot of this is around places. So coffee shop closed, the apartment lounge is a bar, Pub 43 closed, that was a bar, Diversions, that was a nightclub. So what you'll see here is a lot of this is around placemaking in place in the infrastructure of the LGBT community. And what you can see from this slide, I think what it shows is how volatile that is, how volatile the infrastructure for the LGBT community is. And we have the least number of spaces where we can go and feel safe and supported than we've ever had before. And so there are some good things happening in this way, and I want to highlight a couple of what those are. So I'd be remiss. So the apartment lounge is an anchor institution. It really kind of is the center of the social life for the queer community in West Michigan. But it wasn't always that way though. In 2012, it was bought by Bob Johnson from a couple gentlemen, Ed Ladner and Milt Lennox, who they are legends in their own right, having opened and maintained the oldest gay bar in Michigan. And then when Bob bought it, he took it to the next level. So the apartment used to be this nondescript building. It didn't even have this little sign on it. It really just had the A, and you had to know it was there to go there. And it was mostly frequented by white gay men. Once Bob took it over, like I said, he took it to the next level. He made it a place where everyone can go and feel safe. Everyone in the LGBTQ community, no matter where you fall on that spectrum, allies, intersectionality, everyone can go to the apartment lounge now and feel safe and accepted and supported. And now it's not nondescript anymore. If you've been by that area, it's right next to the Children's Museum. He had the road painted rainbow. He's got a mural on the side of it. He's got a nice little outside there. And so, we can really be proud and out there and be a space for all. Another important thing that happened back in these days, the Grand Rapids Pride Festival moved to Calder Plaza. Before that time in its history, it was always in a park on the outskirts of town. It was at the zoo at one point, in which time it was referred to as the Alternative Lifestyle Festival. It was at Riverside Park at one time. But there became a recognition that those spaces don't speak pride. We're kind of hidden on the outskirts of the community. If we really want to talk the talk and walk the walk about what pride really means, why not be in one of the most high profile spaces in town, in a signature space at that. And so when the Pride Center moved to Calder Plaza, that was a huge step forward in recognizing and bringing visibility to the queer community. Okay, so just a few things. Today, are we going forward or backwards? This is what's happening today. The city of Grand Rapids is considering a ban on conversion therapy, which is a positive thing. You know what conversion therapy it is. It's actually an intensive therapy program in which they try to therapize the gay out of you. Really controversial, really negative. And I'm really excited to see that Grand Rapids is considering banning that within the city. I'm sure you've heard there's been protests. There's a local wedding venue on the west side that will not service same-sex marriages. And if we go back to Elliott Larson and how we are not protected classes, that actually might be legal. They might actually have a legal ground to stand on there. We've got a couple of Michigan GOP candidates for governor that are including banning same-sex marriage in their platforms. They're basically saying if they are elected governor, that will be something that they work on, is to reverse and ban same-sex marriage in Michigan again. Like I said, we're still working on those inclusions. The chamber is still really a leader in this space, and including us as protected classes. We're going to keep working on that for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. There is an increased focus on intersectionality and addressing multiple forms of discrimination, so that's really good. The Don't Say Gay Act was passed in Florida. That sets us back. That's a law in Florida. They can't talk about being LGBT in schools there now. And there is even some talk there about parents who support their children who are going through feeling like they might be queer, LGBT, that could even be recognized as child abuse. That's some of the things that are happening, some of the conversations happening in Florida. So just some really tough space for queer people in that state right now. And then Roe v. Wade being overturned. And I'm going to talk about that just in a little bit more detail in just a second here. On a positive note, we're going in a good direction with population. And that is that 1 in 5 Gen Z adults identify as LGBTQ. And as the population continues to grow larger and become a larger percentage of the total population, you can imagine what what the implications of that could be for the future. And as these folks get into leadership and decision-making positions. So just got to talk about this and then I'm done. With Roe v. Wade overturned, it's really caused some, we're afraid that because Roe v. Wade was overturned, that could then set the ground for some of our other rights being reversed. So this US Supreme Court is very conservative, and they're revisiting issues that had already been settled in the past. And so that Roe v. Wade was the first, and we are hoping that this isn't the beginning of a pattern. And so just today, I heard on the news this morning, right before I got on, that the House is voting on a bill today intended to protect the right to same-sex marriage and interracial marriage. So it's expected to pass in the House, but it won't pass in the Senate. It's really more of a symbolic gesture by the Democrats just to show that they recognize that this could potentially be happening and that they're not going to sit by and let it happen. They're going to try to do something about it. And so we're just going to have to see. This whole issue of gay marriage is just still, even though we can enjoy these same rights, we don't know for sure how much longer that could potentially be. And with that, I had to do one more just throwback photo. This was the Outpro Committee in 2014. And like I said, it's grown and evolved quite a bit since then. So I'm all set. With that, I'm going to
Thank you so much, Jill.
Thank you.
That was a really comprehensive, massive taking us through some of the history of LGBTQ issues in the business community. And thank you for sharing that personal story so transparently about how you have to navigate. I want to take this opportunity now to turn it over to our next speaker, Elisa Perez Arellano. And Elisa, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Today is going to be a very nice day. My name is Elisa Perez Arellano. As you already know, I am the owner, the founder, and the CEO of Inclusive Empowerment Services. And I'm so happy to be with all of you today. I'm going to share my screen so you can all see my PowerPoint show. Okay, I'm sharing it. Can everybody see it?
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to be talking about the milestones and challenges in the Americas. When I talk about the Americas, I'm talking about Latin America as well, because sometimes people know that the only country in the American continent is the United States, and that's wrong. So, okay. I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am a clinical social worker, psychotherapist. I gained my bachelor's and master's degree in social work from GVSU. Any Lakers over here, over there? In 2014, I developed and facilitated the first psychoeducational group for queer Spanish-speaking people at the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan. And it was a fantastic opportunity for me to explore the gaps in services for our people in West Michigan. Unfortunately, the program ended a little bit after a year due to lack of support. And that's one of the things that we as people from the Latinx community challenge every day that we don't find services that are culturally sensitive and appropriate for our culture and language. So because I wanted to contribute to the community with my expertise, I developed that program, and it went very well. In 2015, I became a board of director at the Price Center, and I served as a program director, and then the next year as a diversity and inclusion director at the Price Center. Something that we accomplished when we were at the Price Center is that we were able to make a few partnerships, one with Justice for Our Neighbors. I think they still provide legal services to immigrants, LGBTQ immigrants, and the other one with the YWCA. And then in 2016, I was one of the founding members of the LGBTQ New Arabic Coalition. We were working very closely with some nonprofits and even Christians organizations in town that were open to hearing more about the experience of being LGBTQ and refugee or asylum seeking, immigrant, migrant, so on and so forth. And then in 2017, I was approached by a faith-based organization that offered me a job, but I said, I read their like faith-based statement, and I said, I'm sorry, I cannot accept your job because you don't have sexual orientation and gender identity, and you're not protecting us. And they go, would you work for us if we would include it? And I said, okay, yes. And they did. Hopefully they still have it. I don't know if they still have it in their faith statement. So let's hope. And then in 2018, I opened my own private practice, Inclusive Empowerment Services, where I provide mental health services and professional coaching, mainly to professionals who identify as queer or LGBT. And believe it or not, many more people are like getting more like encouraged to come out of the closet. And it's a pleasure for me to serve them and help them, including myself, because I am also identify as a queer. And in 2022, I joined the council member of All-Pro at the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, where we are trying to make a huge difference for all the community. And as I said, I'm going to be talking about the LGBTQ rights milestones in the United States first. I'm very impressed by the list that I found of, I know some things that have happened, but I'm so impressed by all the progress that we are doing in our country. I feel so proud of even me talking about these. And this is just a tiny bit list of things that have happened over the last 25 years. But for example, in 2020, an intimate in the state of Idaho received a gender confirmation surgery. Their name is Andre Edmo. And the state, the Ninth Circuit Supreme Court of Ohio approved it. And it's incredible how the court system is being more sensitive to people when it comes to their sexual identity and sexual orientation. And as we already know, in June 15, 2020, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal law protects the LGBTQ workers from discrimination. However, that's something that they just approve, but employers still need to do it. They have to apply it. They have to find ways that everybody's enforcing it. Unfortunately, many employers feel a little bit, they don't feel secure or safe to do that because they are afraid of the people's reaction and how they're gonna take it, even though it's already part of our law. And in November of 2020, Sarah McBride becomes the the nation's first person who identifies as a transgender to serve as a state senator. It's incredible how we are progressing. And in January 2021, President Joe Biden signs an executive order repealing the 2019 Trump era ban on most transgender people joining the military. And in March of 2021, Dr. Rachel Levine becomes the first out transgender federal official to be elected. How incredible is that? I'm so proud of this country. And in June 2021, Carl Nevis becomes the first NLA player in league history to announce that he is gay. And I think they're still playing. In October 2021, the State Department announces that it's issuing the first use passport with an X gender marker for non-binary, intersex, and gender non-conforming. And this is just, as I said, a small list of things that have happened over the last two years. Now let's talk about the rights, the LGBTQ rights milestones in Latin America. I had to accept that, unfortunately, our countries in Latin America are a little behind when it comes to laws and protection of the LGBT community, but little but surely, they are trying to update their law and be more sensitive to our community. So as of 2021, 24 countries out of 33 countries in Latin America have discriminalized same-sexual acts. So even in some countries in Latin America, if they caught you having intercourse or sex with a person who's the same gender as you are, you can go to jail, unfortunately. Bolivia, Ecuador, and Cuba prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And 11 out of 33 Latin American countries have approved board protection against discrimination against upon sexual orientation, which is a huge improvement in the Latin American country. Same-sex adoptions is legal in Argentina, Colombia, Costa Rica, and Uruguay. Same-sex marriage is legal only in 8 countries out of 33 countries in the American continent, including Canada, in the United States. And same-sex marriage is legal in some states in Mexico. But I feel like by 2025, it'll be legal in all Mexico or Mexico. So what are the challenges of our LGBT community worldwide? A total of 350 transgender people were killed in 2020. 287 out of 350 happened in Central America and South America, with Brazil being the first one, Mexico the second one, and we are in number 28 in the list. US Catholic organizations can still discriminate people against their against LGBTQ people based on religion beliefs, unfortunately, and that includes, as we many know, many of the adoption agencies are run by faith-based organizations, and that's still a challenge in our community to adopt children. 7 countries maintain death penalty for same-sex conduct: Brunei, Iran, Mauritania, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Yemen. The pandemic increased the rates of poverty and homelessness of the LGBT community worldwide. Even here in Michigan, we have seen an increase of people being homeless, and especially our youth or LGBTQ youth. And with that, there are some psychological and emotional implications, and one of the ones that have been on that race is suicide. So our LGBTQ youth are 40% at risk of completing suicide. And we don't know by race and ethnicity, but I got the feeling that people who come from the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, or people of color, are higher level, probably 50%, even 60%. Many of them have tried to complete suicide. They have attempted to complete suicide, but they don't complete it, but still it's a very high rate of people trying to complete suicide or killing themselves. LGBTQ are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide, and it is estimated that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ youth between ages 13 and 24 seriously consider suicide each year in the United States. That's a huge, huge number. And at least one attempt suicide every 45 seconds. So it's already 9:51. Can you imagine how many youth have already thought about completing suicide in only 51 minutes? The Trevor Project, a 2022 national survey on LGBTQ mental health found 40% of the LGBTQ youth seriously consider attempting suicide in the past year, including more than half of transgender and non-binary youth. So the transgender and non-binary community are more affected by suicide or suicide attempts. Let's talk about West Michigan LGBTQ youth. I have a partnership with AYA Youth Collective. It is a drop-in center for vulnerable and high-risk youth. I come into the center every Thursday to provide emotional and support services to youth. And according to Lee Clapham, an outreach specialist at AYA, AYA currently has a minimum of 225 youth who are homeless, ages between 14 and 24. AYA does not know exactly how many of these 225 youth identify as LGBTQ. However, many of them have reported that the reason of their housing instability is due to family members not accepting their identities, unfortunately. Most of these youth have serious psychological and substance dependence issues that can lead to suicide ideation, attempt, or suicide completion. So are we going forward or backward in the United States? I feel that we are definitely going forward, but we can do better. USA and Canada are role models for the Latin America in law protection and inclusion, which is definitely helping the Latin America to model what we are doing here in the United States. Social media giving more visibility and validation of the LGBTQ community. I think we are doing a little bit better, but again, we can do more. And I have seen more churches or faith-based communities accepting and being more inclusive of the LGBTQ community. And especially GR downtown businesses, they are showing more support of our LGBTQ customers. I have seen more flags and more like inclusivity in the downtown area. However, we also need that somewhere else in other parts of the city, not only in downtown. So LGBTQ inclusion and equality that can improve the economic growth. Why? Because so many businesses are missing out on our community. They can do so many good things to help us, but we can also help them because we got money to spend and do things around the city. But one of the things that we can do is to increase funding and grants to develop programming for our community, which is very, very important. The only two resources that we have in town for our LGBT community is the Price Center and AYA. We need more services, especially West Michigan being very philanthropic. I cannot say that word right now. I'm like going fast. Being so charitable to people, I think we need more funding and grants for our LGBTQ community. We need to improve medical and mental health access and quality of services because a community with a healthy mental and physical health can contribute to the society with jobs, with so many things, even with ideas to improve our community. And we need preventative programs, smoking cessation, health screens, substance dependence, mental health, and other supportive services for the LGBT community. And as well, culturally sensitive and linguistically appropriate services. Even though you don't see people from other communities, ethnic or racial communities, that doesn't mean that they don't exist. We are here, and I'm one of them. We need to improve affordable housing as well, but also parent and legal guardian education programs about the LGBTQ youth. I do family therapy, and I see several youth who identify as LGBTQ, and we need that parent education. So these kids, as they are coming out of the closet, the process is less traumatizing. increase healthier recreational programming for the LGBTQ community. That's one of the things that I shared yesterday at one of those groups, Jill, that you were talking about. I attended to one of them, and definitely GR is the beer city, but we also need to be a healthier city, because being a beer city, the incidences of having substance use dependence is very, very, very high. So for that reason, we need more programs for people who want to get detox. And also people that can do something different, not only drink. I think it's important to do other things like increase the green spaces, like more sport activities that can be affordable, because many of those sport activities cost money and they are not accessible for many LGBTQ youth. And we need to increase job opportunities and economic stability for the LGBT community, especially for trans women. They are very discriminated, and they are the ones that need a lot of help because they don't have a job. Many of them don't have a job. They don't have family support. And unfortunately, sometimes they end up in the streets. And we need to create programs to prevent violence in the trans community as well. As I already told you, the killing of trans women is very, very, very high. I don't have the current statistics, but it goes up every year. And unfortunately, we need people to get educated on be more compassionate and loving to everybody, regardless of who they are. And definitely we need to improve and increase law protection overall. I think having those senators and politicians on board with how important it is to protect everybody will increase and improve the economic of our country.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Jill. You all have been incredible. I appreciate the you all coming on to share with me. We have a few minutes left, and I just want to throw this toss out for both of you and give you both probably about 30-second answers. So if you could summarize in 3 words, what are some key priorities should we have if we want to really move LGBTQ plus inclusion forward? In 3 words, what are some key priorities that we should have going forward? Jill, go ahead, Elisa.
We need to increase compassion in the community. We need people to look at people from different perspectives and not from the only perspective that they see. The second one, we need support, and we need people willing to take risk. Compassion, visibility, and risk takers.
All right, thank you. Jill?
I would say 3 words: secure our rights. And that means if we can actually get some policy in there that secures our rights so that we have equal rights to everyone else in terms of protections, marriage, everything else, we can secure those and get those set in stone so they're not volatile anymore. I think that's my answer.
And tell me if I'm wrong here. My sense is that for both of you, those are economic drivers as much as they are about creating great inclusion for LGBTQ folks, right?
That's true. You know, it's back to what I was saying before about talent attraction. And, you know, if you're in a state or a community where queer inclusivity is not evident, you're going to have a hard time attracting talent. And, you know, maybe the top talent in your profession does happen to be a queer person, and if they might not want to move here, they might not want to be here. I've actually heard about some of those situations, examples happening right today.
Yeah, and I've had those conversations as well recently, very recently, with a large manufacturer, president of a large manufacturing firm, who said he cannot recruit the talent he would like and attract the talent he'd like for that very reason. I want to thank you both for coming on today and just sharing with us such a wealth of knowledge. And I want to say thank you to all of those who tuned in. Sorry we didn't get a chance to take a whole lot of questions, but what I'd like you to do is, if you would, Jill and Elisa, if you would be willing to answer questions that we receive offline, I would love to just offer to those participating in the webinar today, send your questions to edi@grandrapids.org, and we'll get them over to Elisa, and then we'll get some put together the composite of all the questions and send them out to the participants on this webinar. Before we depart this morning, I'd just like to highlight a few things coming up from our inclusion team. Our next Diversity and Talent webinar series takes place on Tuesday, October 18th. We'll be hosting Patrick Parks, who is from Absolutely Accessible Kent Business Development Coordinator at Disability Advocates at Kent County. And don't forget to mark on your calendar and register now. Registration is already open for our Diversity and Talent Summit coming up Tuesday, November 15th, the premier diversity summit in West Michigan. This year is a full day event, including work group sessions that you can explore practical solutions to igniting, implementing, and innovating in your DEI practice alongside folks who are in the same state, at the same stage of their DEI work. You can register for both of those events today at grandrapids.org. And for a complete list of our diversity, equity, and inclusion services, visit also our website. And if you have an interest in exploring diversity, equity, and inclusion and getting started on your journey, just contact me at andre@grandrapids.org or visit the diversity services page on our website. That is, and you can set up an free initial consultation there. Following this event, you'll receive a survey asking how likely you are to recommend this program to others. Your feedback is important to us, and it allows us to continually improve and enhance our events and programs. Please take a few minutes and share that event. And I want to thank you all again for participating in our Diversity and Talent series, and thank Elisa and Jill once again for sharing with us so much. I appreciate having you on, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much. Have a great, inclusive rest of your week.